Hey, everybody, this is Tom Sega with Duluth Pack, and this is the Duluth Pack podcast, Leader of the Pack. We have a leader in his field today. His name is Dan Hanger. Dan is an anchor, a reporter, and producer of Fox 21 KQDS News. Dan, welcome.
Hi. Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. I was like, you really want to talk to me for an hour?
Well, no, I don't want to talk to you. I want to listen to you
Oh,
talk, Dan. That's the thing. Our listeners want to hear from you on really what goes into your job. But we're not going to jump into that yet because we want to hear your history and
yeah.
all this on why people would what transforms them in their formative years to say, hey, I want to go into journalism and things like that.
Mhm.
But yes, people do want to listen and find out, hey, these people who are live on the news, holy cow, that's got to be a lot of stress and all that versus what we're doing today is that's recorded. And if we say something goofy, then or say something stupid, then they can edit it out. But let's jump in, Dan, because you know what? You've really become a leader in your field. And our listeners want to know somebody like you, where did you grow up? What was your childhood like? And then what made you go into journalism?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in the Chicago area and graduated in 2005 from Columbia College, Chicago, right downtown, Michigan Avenue, beautiful. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago there, and then so yeah, that was a big transition to be like taking the train and going downtown and all that good stuff. But and the school, Columbia College, was amazing because it's so culturally diverse, more than I had ever experienced. So I mean, that was a really great education for me too, and to learn from people, which then helps my current job. But when I went there, one of the reasons I did go there was because my GPA wasn't so good, or what is it, the SAT score or something? I don't know. It was terrible. My score was terrible, and so the cool thing about Columbia College is that they don't care about the scores, because I feel like if you are an artsy type person, whether it's journalism, television, acting, I think they had like professional dancing there and music and all that different stuff. Your brain is maybe working differently than the person who sits down and can do the math and all that crap is basically what I think of it. So, yeah, so I was like, yay, I get to go to college. But anyway, what did you ask me? I already got everything in my brain. I don't.
Well, you know what, Dan? We're going to go back even further because
Oh,
what was your you grew up in the
oh,
suburbs of Chicago. So if you don't mind, where did you grow up? And then when you were in, let's say grade school, middle school, high school, was journalism on the radar, or was it, hey, something triggered that hey, I got into the newspaper at school and I really thought this was cool. So tell us about that before you even went to
oh, sure.
Columbia.
Okay, yeah, all right, yeah. I had an energy drink. I woke up about a half hour ago. I had an energy drink, so my brain's a little all over the place. So good. Thanks for keeping me on track. Yeah. So suburb of Chicago, Des Plaines, Illinois, and Rosemont, Illinois, right by O'Hare Airport. There. My dad was a police officer. My mom worked in like gymnastics and yes, I saw you just cheer for the police officer. Yes, police officer and firefighter. He retired now. He was mounted patrol as well, which was pretty cool. Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, when you talk about the horses too, by the way, why he liked that so much was because I would always go. My vacations were at my grandma's farm in Missouri, southern Missouri. So that was my upbringing, and was driving her car at the age of like 8 years old. That's how I learned to drive. So I got that nice southern charm there, I guess, in my genes. But I loved, I think where it all started was I was obsessed with weather, crazy obsessed with weather. I just loved it. I love storms, still do. And had the weather radios. Well, I would watch the Weather Channel like crazy. I just loved it. And then I just, for some reason, naturally was so, I guess, curious, would watch the local television news. And then I was just obsessed with like, hey, that lighting in the back of the newsroom there, it's like, it's off. It's not perfect how it should be with the other pillar there. Like I was just obsessed with the whole production of television in general. And as I was getting older, I was like, I am just so interested in everything. That news is really where it's at. And then if you wanted to be a meteorologist, you had to know math. And remember, I told you I can't do that stuff. So, I just forced myself basically on the local televisions in Chicago, sending them emails and everything, just making connections like crazy when I was like 12, 13, 14, so that I could get into every single television station. And so there's one, my biggest mentor is one of the people who I reached out to way back when, who I still talk to today. Yeah, so it's super cool. And she works for the Emmys and stuff now. She's retired. And so when the Emmys get judged, other television markets, television professionals will judge those things. And so she's reaching out to me. I'm like, of course, yes, because she helped me get basically an internship at one of the television stations in Chicago. And it was right when they were starting websites. I know that sounds crazy, but literally big Chicago starting up their first website. I was an intern there. And then because I took that, because I was like, I don't want to get into web stuff, not even realizing how big of a deal web is now, for journalism in general. But that helped me get a job at the NBC station in Chicago, being the weekend hub web editor, I guess you could say. And what they did was I would work like 12 hours, Saturday and Sunday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. There was another person in LA. And then at the time for the NBC owned and operated television stations, there was like 13, I think, or 14. We split them up and we could get into everybody's rundowns of all of their news articles. And basically, they paid us to post on all of those sites, turn their TV scripts into web scripts. And I was like crazy because that's 19 years old doing that. I don't even know how I had the guts to do that stuff, because now I'm like, I can't take that job or this job. I'm comfortable where I'm at. So yeah, that's what I did. And so the last 2 years of college, I was working at that big television station there. And of course, I was just like overwhelmed. And so it was like going into a newsroom for me as a kid, in a big newsroom, like Chicago newsrooms, with so much activity and people are running around and you hear the scanners and all that kind of stuff. It was like Disney World for me as a kid. So it was just, I don't know. I just was fascinated with everything and the process and the speed and what's happening now and the live television. So yeah, so I was just like, if I could just sit there for hours, I would tell my one mentor, Diana Borey, can I just sit me somewhere? You don't have to worry about me or bother me. I just want to watch.
Really? You could actually, Dan, I know you a little bit. You could sit and watch?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing. That is the thing, because I can't sit. But in that overstimulated environment, I can focus. And isn't that the weirdest thing? So that's just like in breaking news today. I feel like that's one of my biggest talents. When things are going crazy, I can narrow focus and I just am so calm. And so that obviously really works for this business. So yeah.
So in 2004, you became an NBC O&O news editor. What
Yeah.
is an O&O
Oh,
news editor?
yeah. So that's that owned and operated thing. So there's like NBC affiliates across the country, but NBC in New York, which I don't even know who owns them anymore, if it's Comcast or whoever, but they have basically own the big stations across the country. NBC in New York, Chicago, LA, Miami, Dallas. So at the time they had 14. I think they've sold off some of them, but yeah. So it was the big, legit NBC owned and operated television stations. Yep. So I was that hub editor with that other person in LA, and we worked on all the websites.
So what does an editor actually do?
Yeah. Well, how that was considered was it was crazy that at 19 years old, and I had a little code that I could access everybody's newscasts, like WNBC in New York, I was having access to, and I'm like, I don't know if they'd allow that today. I know, that's New York. But I would take the reporters' scripts, I'd find their biggest story. And then, writing for television is way different. It's very conversational. It can look really choppy. Like when if you look at my scripts and there's a rundown or in the teleprompter, I've got dots and return and choppy everything just to talk how I would talk to somebody, I guess is how you say it. But when you edit all of that and put it into print, that's a whole different ball game. You got to actually do like full sentences and there's always attribution, but quotes and all that stuff. and figure out the title of the article and all that. The cool thing was, thankfully, and I learned a lot through this, is that I would edit as much as I could, do my best. Then I would send it in an email to a like copy editor, and then they would make the corrections, and I would get it back in an email with the red marks, and then I could fix it so it was 100% ready to go, and then I would publish it on the site.
So as an editor, you were doing it for the digital part of it. Did you also do it for the host or the personality on the news at that point
No,
as well? Okay.
Nope. I was strictly just taking what they had produced for television and then transcribing it and editing it to print, basically.
Okay.
Digital.
So then we go to
Yeah.
06. And you became the morning anchor reporter for Granite Broadcasting right here in Duluth, Minnesota. Did you even know where Duluth, Minnesota was at that time?
No. No. So what happened is that back then, I think it was VHS that I was sending out, or it might have gotten to DVDs. I don't know. But, you got to send your reel out is what they call it, with some of your samples and stuff. And so my samples would be whatever I had at broadcasting class in college, because they had wonderful facilities there. I just highly recommend it because a lot of the people who work at Columbia College are people who work in the business. So I had people who I watched on television, and back then to me, those are some stars to me. They were my actual teachers. And so they really told it like it was. Some people couldn't handle that, but it's like, if you can't handle it from that teacher, then you're not going to be able to handle this, this business, because it can be a little, it can be a little, I don't know, abrasive. I don't know. We had no time to mess around. We got to get the thing done. Anyway, what was the question?
It was just that you are going to come to Duluth, Minnesota. And I was asking, I mean, did you even know? I thought maybe you said, hey, I want to go to the craziest weather place in the world, because even though I can't do the math of a meteorologist, I can hang out with them.
Yeah, it was, no, yeah, right, exactly. No, so I sent it out and it was super competitive back then, whereas it has changed now. But Cheyenne, Wyoming called, and Duluth, Minnesota. Cheyenne, Wyoming is way out, whatever that is. And then Duluth was like, oh, I could drive to Duluth. So I drove. And this is like, I don't know if I was sheltered or what, but when I was driving up there all by myself for this interview at KBJR, Channel 6 in Duluth, driving in, and I'm coming from Wisconsin side. And then I see this huge hill. What I was thinking, in Duluth, what I was thinking it was going to be this little hodunk place, cornfields or something like that. No. And I thought, oh no, what am I getting myself into? And here I am, I'm from Chicago. But when I saw this, I was like, this is too big. This is too big. I was so scared. And I see, the big light posts or whatever on top of the hill, the radio towers and stuff blinking at me. And I'm like, oh no. But anyway, I drove in and I was offered the job that day, and I was like, yeah, okay. And they go, well, because of your experience, we're going to give you, we usually do $18,000 a year. We're going to do $18,500 for you. And I just said, yeah, okay. I took it.
You're like, I'm making the big bankroll now, right?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, back then, you always knew that you just had to go to the small markets and work your way up. And people were lined up out the door back in 2006 to want to be a journalist or a TV journalist, cool TV. I mean, think about it. I think Facebook was just starting at that time or around there. So none of this social media or anything. It was people actually really, truly turned into their local news. So, so there we go. And so I was offered the job, and the first place I went to was Old Chicago in Canal Park, because I just was like, oh, good, Chicago.
Yeah, I feel at home now, right? Did you work through an agency or a rep, or did you go scouting all on your own to find that first career job?
Did it, yeah. Usually, and I think even today, is when you're getting that first job, it's pretty much you just do it on your own. There's a site called tvjobs.com. Everybody went there. I don't think they go there as much as they used to, but that was it. You went on there, all the television stations posted the jobs there, and you just sent your tapes out all over the place and see who calls you back.
Tell us about your first day on the new job. What were your duties? First, what job did you get? What were your duties? And what was it like your first day in a new community in the journalism profession?
Well, I should tell you before I did my interview and I went to the old Canal Park Inn, I think it was just an old L, like before it was built, like there was a huge gap in the door to the room, and there was like rust in the sink and stuff. This is back when. And I just put my face down and I just cried. I said, I don't know what I'm getting myself into. But anyway, okay, so I got the job. I go to the door, it's locked. And I'm like, oh no, aren't I supposed to be here now? And the news director wasn't there. It was just a little bit chaotic. But when I got there, yeah, I started off. What I didn't know was that I was the first one-man band reporter, as they called him then. There was one guy known as Super Dave Anderson who's there, who's still around, and he's wonderful. And so he always did his own stories, but they were like features. But for me, what I didn't realize was they were starting this whole trend of we don't need to pay a photographer, an editor, and a reporter. We can make them do it all. Well, you learn that in college, but I wasn't expecting what I was getting into. And they had just gotten rid of Channel 3. They shut it down. And then they brought them all into the Northlands News Center, is what it was called at the time. So there were a million shows, a million newscasts, and they're like, go do it. And I was so scared. I was like, I don't know. And I just hate editing. I hate it. I like to just talk, ask questions, write, and then the rest, let the other people deal with it, So I struggled a lot for the 2 years there. But I learned.
Question for you. Do you remember the first person that you went out carrying the camera, having the script, having the microphone that you interviewed, and how did it go?
So I remember the first story. It was one of Palucci's plants were closing down in 2006. One of them were shutting down and people were being laid off. So I was with a photographer at first because they just wanted to help train me. This Dan Elgenrath was his name. And and I was like, they wanted you to always do a stand-up in a story, kind of that reporter in the middle of a recorded story. And I just didn't, I was just so overwhelmed. And when I think about it now, I'm like, and nobody was helping me. But here's the thing. I'm glad I went through a lot of that stuff where I was so scared and all that. Because now when I have a new reporter coming in, I know exactly how they're feeling or worse. And I didn't even know what to ask. Who do I call? And really it's, okay, this business is shutting down. All right. Why? How many people are involved being laid off? And is the economy changing? What is it? That's it. That's it. That's all anybody wants to know or needs to know. But I couldn't comprehend that at the time.
Now look at it just flow off your tongue, right?
Yeah.
So what is the key difference between then a reporter, which I believe that's what you were doing then, and an anchor? Is there overlap there? Are they two separate silos? Educate us laymen about your industry there.
Yeah. So some people call them, I think they got away from one-man band, first of all. So now it's like multimedia journalists, basically. The reporters in this market, for the most part, are taking the camera out, getting their interviews. They're everything. They're the photographer, editor, reporter. They do it all. I can't stand it. I'll never do that ever again. At this age, not saying I'm super old, I'm going to turn 41, but I'm done with that. I don't want to do it. So you have that. Then you could just say a reporter, but I think everybody who's going out doing stories is a reporter, or a journalist, that kind of thing. And but when I think of a reporter, I think of a reporter who's with a photographer, and the photographer does the editing. You're doing questioning, you're doing the writing. That's the team that I like, because I don't think it's really helpful for people in serious situations or whatever to just be alone, or to have to think about 900 different things. I need to talk to somebody who's maybe lost their loved one, or maybe there's a lot of, I don't know, something really exciting going on. I don't have time to worry about this camera. And then when you got the camera and you're messing around with that, now you've lost the connection with the person you're interviewing. So I highly can't stand it. And I think that it's just being cheap for a lot of these television stations. They need to storytelling is where it's at. If you don't tell a good story, who's going to be, you're going to lose your audience. So I'm pretty passionate about that stuff. But as an anchor, you're still a journalist. An anchor is just, for a show. So like I anchor the news at 5:30 and 9 o'clock, but I also produce the show. That's why I had the producing. And I love producing the show because it's like your craft. You start with an empty template, and literally we have our meeting, and we can talk more about that if you want. But don't want to get sidetracked. But yeah. And then as an anchor, I still report and go out on the streets and do stories. I don't do as much. I pick and choose, and usually it's the bigger stuff. I don't want to go to the press conference for some politician.
So then I'm honored because you interviewed me. How lucky am I?
Yeah.
You came and interviewed me.
Hey, you've been on Fox News Channel. I've seen you on the national news. You've made it bigger than me.
Oh, yeah.
So I give you some time. Well, you got to, I like that. Well, when I was doing the morning show for a while, so that gave me an opportunity to do more more relaxed, fun, featurey type stuff, and that was so fun. And I mean, I'm fascinated with people, or fascinated in how they have successes or their struggles or whatever. And I mean, Duluth Pack, come on.
Folks, I do have to tell you, I've been interviewed working at Duluth Pack, a pretty iconic, cool company. I've been interviewed a lot, right? And some of them are really just X's and O's, kind of sterile and stuff. And I told you this when you interviewed me, and we had never met before personally before that first interview, and we were done. I was like, that was the easiest interview I have ever done, because you know what you and I did? We just had a conversation.
Yep.
And I don't even know if we ended up going where you thought we were going to go during it, but you made my life so easy. That's a really cool knack that you have. I'm gonna give you the kudos there, because as an interviewee from you, you made it super easy on me, where it's not like, oh, where's he going? Is he looking for a story here or something like that?
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
well, I appreciate that, because that's super important. I think that's like, you got to be. I used to stress myself out so much just in general with human interaction with people, because I would see one person, how they were reacting to the other person talking, and I knew what they were feeling, but that other person didn't realize what they were doing to affect that person. Like, I can just see it all. And so, but I've gotten a balance, but for work, it works out really well. But that's another key point. I had a photographer with you. So I didn't have to think about that. It was you and me, and that's the connection. And then the story came out way better than just cookie cutter stuff.
Yeah, some boring canvas bag,
Yes.
right? So news never ends, right? 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So you had a job, and I believe this was at Channel 6 here locally, as a morning anchor and reporter. Tell us what a typical day, because you guys get up early. When you're the morning person, you get up early. What was a typical day like? How does it even formulate?
Well, it sucks for me, because I was 22 and I wanted to party. I wanted to party. And so when I never partied in college or anything, and I never drank in college until I came here. And boy, did they teach me very well in my 20s. And thank goodness I've calmed down. But yeah, so that made it really difficult. Yeah, I mean, it was a 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. show. There was a producer, so I think I needed to be there at 3. I was always late. I was a flustered little 22-year-old, I'll tell you that. Much more calm now. But yeah.
So what does the process look like? You show up at 3 a.m., obviously with coffee in hand, but now you got 2 hours to prep for your day. And as all of us are waking up, you have to be awake, and you have to be telling us about what happened since we went to bed.
Yeah.
How does that all get put together in that short time frame, so that when it's go time at 5 a.m., you're ready to go and you have everything prepped?
Yeah, I think mornings I don't feel are as difficult to produce and prepare for, because in Duluth, Minnesota, it's very different from Minneapolis or Chicago. Most of the time, something didn't happen overnight. If anything, there might have been a fire, or there might have been something like that, and you can run and get some video. Sometimes big things happen, but most of the time in this market, not so much. It's a lot of moving stuff over from the night before, finding some newer things. Maybe there's some new national story that we can run. Yeah, and you build as much as you can. Like for our show, we're 7 to 9, which is way better. Way better, 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. That's a lot easier. And our ratings continue to grow in the morning. I'm so happy about that, because I think people have just found a niche for maybe moms at home or whatever. But yeah, you look at the night before, you check your wires, where we we purchase the Associated Press wire stories that we get a service. So sometimes there's stuff there that happens overnight, or sometimes Twin Cities News we're very connected with them. So there could be something that could lead that way. But a lot of times weather is leading the way, which is kind of nice, because that's what people want to know right away before they go to work or that kind of thing. So yeah.
Well, we do live 150 miles north of the Arctic Circle, so the weather is kind of an important thing around these places.
Yep. So yeah, and then if you want to know about the day, then from there is that those morning people, they do their thing until 9 a.m. Then after that, there's a morning meeting with the news director and the morning reporters or whoever's here, photographers. We all talk about, we got press releases and stuff that constantly come in. We file all of those things so that we don't forget. But here's what's happening today that we know of. What do you have for original story ideas? And that's another important thing, to have the most diverse as possible newsroom from people from all walks of life, because if you only had your own little life and what you think is news, that's going to reflect, I think, on your product. So it's a discussion, and we decide, pick and choose. We are dealing with staffing issues. It is so bad, but we make it work, and we try to pick and choose. We can't get to everything like we used to, but we eventually do get to it. And then they get assigned and they get moving, and we decide, does everything go in the 5:30, or is this story we want to do maybe more of a preview and then really not blow it up, but really give it its all at 9 o'clock, so it's not repeating too much. And then when I come in at 1:30, that is, we talk about what is already on the day. Then I give my ideas, and maybe something else popped up or whatever. We're listening to the scanner too to see if there's something going on that we need to go out to. There's some sort of a water rescue or whatever. So it's always changing and evolving. But when I come in, they're already working on the 5:30, but I handle mostly the 9 o'clock. And so it's a blank slate. And it's so fun to have like all that creative, the flow. How is this story going to be 30 seconds or not? It's got to be 20, or we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to, all that good stuff. Because I like a show that flows and keeps going. Boom, 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 boom. So
okay, but before we come back all the way up to doing the night show, now we got to go back to 2009. You can't skip all this good learning fodder here, Dan. But Dan, before we move on, and folks, our guest today is Dan Hanger. He's an anchor, a reporter, and producer of Fox 21 KQDS News, and the anchor at 5 and 9 o'clock every day. Dan, give us your social handles, give us the website, give us everywhere that people can follow you and listen to you and all that, because you are not only a journalist, but you're really entertaining.
Oh, well, funny you are. I wish I could just do a comedy show, honestly, and use every word I like to use. So, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. What is my handle? I guess it's Dan_Hanger is what I think it is. And I'm on Twitter too, and you'll see it'll pop up. And and then we're on fox21online.com is our website. So there's that. And 5:30 and 9 o'clock is my show that we do here. And then I got meteorologist Rusty Melberg, we have a good little connection going on. Chemistry is super important, by the way, to a product. You got some stiff whatever. Like, I don't have time for that. And we have a good balance, so it's working out.
Okay, before we come all the way forward to now, we're going to go back to 2009.
Hard to keep me in control, yeah.
Well, you know what? Sometimes herding cats, right, Dan?
That's right. Thank you.
So in 2009, you transitioned to the digital media specialist at Gap West Broadcasting here in Duluth. What went into that role, and what transitioned you at that point out of news anchoring into trying something new like that?
Well, you skipped the part when I got fired. Do you want to know about that?
This whole time, that is, Dan, that's yours. I use the word transition.
No, fired. You got to tell the truth. I was fired because I could not get up anymore. I couldn't do it. And then, I was so stressed out, but I don't regret a thing. See, that's the thing. All these experiences are good, very good, because as long as you handle them well, which I did. I thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. We're fine. Everything's fine. And I didn't wake up one morning because I stayed out too late. And what was it? Oh, the old flip phones. I had like an old flip phone, and that was my alarm. And sometimes when I flipped the dang phone, it would turn off. So my alarm didn't go on. And so I look up, I'm like, it's 5:30. The news is on at 5. Whoops. So I looked at the TV, somebody was there, but anyway, they fired me. So that's great. Good for them. And we're all friends. Everything's fine. So I'm like, what am I going to do? Am I going to leave Duluth? I really like Duluth. And Duluth reminds me of home. Having that lake, the water is like everything to me, it's just so relaxing and it's wonderful. So I went to the radio station groups because I kind of knew them already. And yeah, digital media specialist, it was a newer position and it was trying to do their digital products just like they were evolving with radio. It can't just be on one platform, we need to be on multiple. So I tried that, but it was more of a sales position. And I'm not really I can sell something if I'm passionate about something, but sales it seems dirty to me. But I know sales are very important, but it's just not me. It wasn't me. And I was figuring it out. I'm like, do I go away? Do I stay? But I really want to stay. Yeah. So that's where that was. And then
what did you do there?
Huh?
What did you do there then?
Well, they made me do the saveonthelot.com. So it was like a digital product that basically their model was you could use their radio waves to get people to the digital product saveonthelot.com, which was just like a cars.com place that you could search vehicles and stuff. And so I had to go and learn all these dealerships, which I knew nothing about cars, but I had to try to sell this product. And I was just like, this is, and car salesmen, especially if you're dealing with the GMs, they're tough. Those guys are tough. They know how the game goes. And so I had fun. It was a good time. But again, I took it, honestly, to also stay somewhat relevant, I guess you could say, whether that was true or not. I would also fill in on the radio and stuff. So I had that voice still going. And then, yeah.
Awesome. Now, 1 year later, 2010, you become the main anchor, reporter, and producer of Fox 21 KQDS. 2010. You know what? That's 14 years.
I know.
Holy catfish.
Catfish, yes. And the thing is, I didn't know if I was going to take the job because it was first a reporter position. I just wanted to get back in. So I did do that. But miraculously, the main anchor guy who had been there for 4 years, basically, that was the beginning of the news. So it wasn't around that long on Fox 21. But so he decides to leave. I was like, is this for real? And then I ended up getting it. The news director thankfully liked me. The GM didn't so much, I guess, because I was, very all over the place and dramatic and la 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 la. So over the years, I found my place of a little bit of entertainment, heavy on the news, but not too serious. It's a whole mind thing to figure out who am I on television.
I have a question for you, because we're not a huge market, but we're a nice sized market. You've been an anchor for 13 and a half, 14 years here in Duluth. You are an extremely recognizable person. You have a huge following around here. What's it like to go out to dinner, go out and have a beer? I mean, are people like, hey, can I have your autograph? Or, there's a big shot in town over there.
So when I was younger, it stressed me out when I was younger because all I wanted to, I was hearing, oh, I saw you drunk at the bar. Like, yeah, I saw you too. Why couldn't I? So I was kind of paranoid, and I think I was just finding myself in my 20s, but now I'm much calmer and all that good stuff. And I think because I truly am myself on the desk, and I'm so thankful that I've been able to, this place has evolved so much to where I can 100%. I feel I'm not going to get fired. I do my job. I do my thing, and I'm just me. And I hated always being anybody who was fake. I can see through it. People can see through that stuff on the air. And that was the old days, I think, where you think you needed to talk like this and you needed to. It's like, knock it off. And especially nowadays with podcasts and Facebook and all the different channels that people connect to with on YouTube and everything else. People don't want it, especially in this area. They don't want that stuff. They don't want that big city. They want it's just me. So I think when I see people, they already know half about my life already because I talk about everything all the time on the news. And hey, Dan, I say, hey, how's it going? And it's more of just like you passing your buddy in the store. Sometimes people will stop. They do. But I have the conversation, and I've also that was stressful at first because I was like, okay, I remember when I met somebody who I saw on television. I don't think myself as anything special, but anyway, if the littlest thing that they would have done, I've been like, oh, they aren't nice. You just, that's a natural, I think, human thing. Like, oh, they were a jerk or whatever. So I just kind of, sometimes I can just get through the conversation a little faster. That's all. Or else I'm never going to be able to do anything. But yeah, no, people are cool. Everybody's chill in this area.
So I want to go back even further. So when you
Yeah.
were getting up and having to be at work at 3 a.m., what time were you going to bed? Other than the one night that got you fired because you stayed out too late.
Yeah, I think I stayed out till 2 a.m. But anyway, yeah.
So you could have gone straight to work.
I should have, but I probably could have driven.
But what time would you have to go to bed to work a schedule like that? Because it's so different than what a lot of us and our listeners would think.
Gosh, I don't even remember because I mean, I think would you be going to bed at 8 or 9 o'clock, maybe the latest to get up for that? That would give you 6 hours or so. I don't know. But for like the 7 a.m. thing, sometimes I would fill in the morning here after doing the nights, but I would pre-produce the show. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can even remember back then. I'm getting older.
Okay, so quick question. So now you said you come in at like 2 o'clock and you start prepping for your 5:30, and then
Yep.
really you're producing the 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
So tell us what a typical day. What does today look like for Dan Hanger, who got here at 2 o'clock, other than me messing him up for about an hour here on doing a podcast? What's your typical day look like? And then I don't want to forget about makeup because I have a funny one to throw in there on the whole makeup thing when I've been interviewed.
Yeah, right. I wrote it down so I don't forget either. Oh wow, the time is flying. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, like today, for example, I got up and I woke up to texts. One was a story idea for later, and then the other one was a story for today. So I just sent a quick email. I try to keep that stuff separate, or else you'll, like you say, news never stops. You'll go crazy. And I was like, I can't. I was so overwhelmed, and then you just got to set your boundaries. But so I try not to look at it. I'm thinking if something really is blowing up, I'll find out somehow. Somebody will call or that kind of thing. So everything can wait. But I get into 1:30. We have our little meeting. Usually it's done by 2. We figure out what was going on during the day, and then what we've got maybe change in the evening. What's our resources like? Who's here? Who's not here? Who's out? What do we got? Or we got to make do or whatever. And then, I just kind of get to it. I keep track of all things as I'm producing the show. What other stuff is coming up? I also check the other news sites in town. Do they have something? Oh, they're posting this or that. And then to me, my news values, I'm like, I don't really care about that. I want to, this is my focus because you can go to some stations and all they do is report on crime all day long. Like I could do an hour thing of crime. Who cares? Yeah. But of course, if something big happens, sure. But it's also, I think, it is not, I don't know. I don't think it's right because you're putting a false feeling of what the city is actually, what it is not. Like the world isn't ending here. Things do happen. But if you're just talking constantly about crime, it makes it seem like the world's ending, So those are just things that go into your mind. But when you're producing it, it's a flow. Are we going to do all these serious stories? I can maybe break this up. And that's what makes the hour-long show so wonderful because there's so much space to work with. It's not so rigid and structured as those half-hour newscasts. But yeah, I just get to it. And then we usually, by 5 o'clock, I'm kind of wrapping, got to get this thing done. So, because the editor's got to edit everything too. So whatever I'm writing, what's the video? And then I got to find that maybe it's file video, or we got to go out and get the video, and then communicating that with the editors so that they're doing their thing. And to make sure everything's in. And then there's promos that we record that air between, I think it's 7 and 9, obviously. And so those we usually tape right after the 5:30, but I got to get the video in to the editors before, so that right when we're done at the 5:30 news, we do that. And then right after that, I usually don't eat dinner. I don't, Weatherman can. He has a little more time, but I get really right to 9 o'clock, and then hoping to get everything into the editors by 8, so they have a solid hour comfortably to get everything done. But that can all change. Sometimes it's, thankfully now, oh, we've got a city council meeting, but we don't have a reporter tonight. So I got to look at the city council meeting, recording it while I'm doing the news. And so, it's constantly, and I got to think I have a nice big TV. So I'm usually watching Depends. Fox, CNN. I kind of like to flip back through all of them just to see what's going on, because that's a whole nother story about cable news. But yeah, so yeah, and we just keep on going, and then it depends on what's going on. I mean, if there's like a big weather event, I like to create special things on my monitor here and have more of a theme. Maybe there's live cameras we want to take. That's the fun part of producing it. So it's not good evening, la la la, here's the story. It's like, oh, let's produce something.
So we're actually recording this on
Yeah.
Wednesday, the 6th of March, 2024. Do you know the significance of this day in journalism?
Oh no. What did I do?
You didn't do
Did I
anything.
miss something? I don't know.
No, but it's pretty cool. It's one of the first things I read this morning on the
Oh,
news early this morning. Walter Cronkite signed off for the last time in 1981 on this day.
well, dang. See, that's why you get to the network level.
Yeah, right.
Boy, have times changed. I'll tell you that from way back when, you know.
Yep. Yeah, what they used to say, the most trusted man in America.
Well, and he had that voice,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, well, and that's super interesting too, because I mean, think about your nightly news broadcast that used to have, I mean, millions and millions. They still have millions, but it's not that go-to place anymore every day. I mean, it's super important what they do, and it's amazing what they fit into like 22 minutes around the world. I mean, you are talented and I feel like I'll watch a nightly news program when I get home sometimes on YouTube. They put it on there after it's done, and so I can watch it and boom, 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 and I'm just like, wow, I feel informed. So yeah, the platforms, everything has changed so dramatically. It's not just this one spot anymore.
Let's talk about this hair and makeup thing because I've
Yeah,
been interviewed a lot of places because I get to be at a pretty cool company that people
yeah.
find a neat story of. And I was at one interview and it was national news. And I did it locally in the Twin Cities, and then they live were feeding it to New York. And it was hilarious because as I'm getting ready to walk out of the room to go in where they're going to record and ask me the questions, one lady said, sir, can you come back in here? Your forehead is shining quite a bit.
Tiny. Yeah, yeah. Like ton of lights, and it'll pick every speck and everything. Yeah, yeah. I can't stand it, but yeah, gotta put the plaster on.
So do you do that? Is there a
Yeah.
staff that takes care of all this stuff? I mean, what
No,
happens?
no, we do it ourselves. I got my little bag in the bathroom there, and I slap it on, and that's been a whole thing. When I first started, because I got makeup that was so dark that somebody asked, I swear they asked something like, "Is that guy like from Cuba or like it's like some other country?" I was like, "Other place." I mean, and I was just like, "Oh my God." No. So yeah, that's a whole thing, because too, if I get really, really tan in the winter, I mean in the summer, and then if your color's off, you know, it's like, or I'll get really white and then my makeup's too dark. So it's kind of annoying. But yeah, yeah, yeah. But I can do it so fast now. I'll run in there sometimes 5 minutes to show, because I'm always messing around, and boom, boom. I got a whole system down.
You got it down. That's awesome. Just keep the shine down. And as you get older and you start to like me, your forehead just gets bigger. So don't forget about
I got a
adding a little
big
more.
forehead. It's huge. That's huge. People compare me to Frankenstein, but that's all right.
Hey, Dan, toughest story that you ever had to cover and or read?
I would, yeah. The tough ones are when people lose people to violence. That's the worst. And another reason how things have changed, when the old days, you literally, if you wanted to talk to a human being who has gone through something terrible, that is obviously has all eyes on this crime, and let's say it's a mother and their two kids were shot and killed or something terrible, if you were going to get that personal story, which was always a weird balance of like, yeah, it's my job, but gosh, like, do they want to talk about their loved one? Do they not? And you'd have to door knock. You'd have to go up to their door. Horrible. I hated doing it. Hated it. And nowadays, thank goodness for social media. For example, I just talked to somebody that was that terrible crime in Cloquet with the clerk at the hotel and the guy in the parking lot and the man that was on meth and just randomly shot and killed her. And so you can reach people so much better now, especially I've got like 18,000 people on my Facebook page, and over the years and growing relationships, that if I reach out, they're like, oh, that's Dan Hanger. And then I can nicely, give my condolences. Here's what I would hope that we could do together. If you wanted to do that, here's my goal. And I try to explain to people, like, the crime is all that's being reported. The humanity is missing here. And the only way to do that is through your voice, if you want to, and honor who this person was, not keep thinking about the other thing. So yeah, those are really hard, but I think they've also gotten easier for me only because people, I already feel like I know them, or they know me. So it makes it easier to tell the story. And I think I've just gotten more used to how I appropriately handle it and how I communicate that with people. I think a really tough one was when Canine Haas was shot and killed with the Duluth Police Department 5 years ago. And then I had the trust of the officer to tell that unfortunate story. It was the first canine to ever be killed in the line of duty. My goodness, and the community support and the emotions, and that could have been him. And so he sat down with me. We did the story. It was really something. And we waited until he was training with a new canine Luna. I went down to the St. Paul, showed all of that wonderful comeback type story. Put this beautiful piece together, and it was so hard to see it, but you get the approval from them before you show the vest with the blood. But the point is of that, and this is some of the editorial stuff you think about: is that necessary? Is it not? Should we show it? Is it too much, or will it really connect with people? Like, this is no joke. And so we went with it, and I got the approval, and all that. And then Canine Luna dies 2 years later in the same situation, and I was just crushed. It was like, how could I not be feeling so personal connection to this? And oh my gosh, that family. So yeah, so that's the one I think I'll always remember for a really really long time. That one won't go away, because I'm proud of the product that we did, and I'm proud of how we told the story. But and now I have they're forever the wife and the officer, and we still talk. And I actually asked him for his permission on Canine Luna's anniversary of the death. It just happened 3 years, and I said, are you okay if I rerun this story, because it was so impactful? And so he's like, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, some of those stories, they stick with you forever.
Favorite story you've ever had? Is there one that's just like,
oh my gosh,
so awesome?
This is another, I won't ever forget this. I was at the deck for the centenarian birthday parties that I was emceeing for the city at one of the shows there. And there was this spunky guy, 100 years old, something like that, 100, 101. And he still drove. He still went to the mall, Miller Hill Mall. Millard LaJoy was his name. And he had a band when he was younger, banjo type thing. And I mean, he was just a fascinating person and so healthy. So I did a story with him just about what it was like to be that. And I got in the car with him, and he was hilarious. We got along so well. And he just, for some reason, just loved me. And we became buddies. And then he had like a valve, crazy, I don't know all this medical stuff, but some sort of valve in his heart that needed to be replaced. Now he was 103. It was like a historic thing with Essentia. They never did it before. Might have been St. Louis, I can't remember, but successfully did it, made it out. He's like, I'm back. So we did an update on that. So I was just amazingly smart, fantastic, person. Yeah, and I followed him through his life. I think he passed away at 104 years old, but he'd call me Danny boy. And I have all those memories and stories. They're online. They live forever. So it's cool. That's the one that always comes to mind right away. Yeah.
Dan, 2018, clip of you was viewed and seen on the Tonight Show on Jimmy Fallon. Tell us about it.
Well, I didn't even think it was funny. I'm like, man, I've said a whole lot more. But I think what that did was, it was like, I was sitting at the anchor desk. I look over, I'm like, this sports guy, Sam Ali, would wear a bow tie, and it was all whatever. And I said, you look like a birthday present and all that. And then he goes, it was kind of a joke, but he was like, he just said what he said because it was live. And he's like, all right, what do you want to open me? And I was like, huh. Well, so I think it was the awkwardness that everybody really felt. which is why they thought it was so funny. I said, no, it's cold or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, they picked it up. It was quite funny because I was sitting here all alone after the show. And I don't think it was that night that it happened, but it was that week or something. And somehow the clip got there and my phone was going crazy. And I was like, what? I'm on Jimmy Fallon. What? And then I looked, I was like, oh, hilarious. And they were laughing hard. And the crazy thing about that too, to think about is that they do a pre-taping with like another set of audience members. That's not the live show. So it has to go through this whole process. And I was like, that went through a process to get on this major show. I didn't get any money out of it. I didn't get a job offer, but whatever.
You know what? But you were on national TV. Look at
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, right.
Folks, today we're talking to Dan Hanger, anchor, reporter, and producer of Fox 21 KQDS News, the 5:30 and the 9.
Yeah.
We are going to pivot real quick here,
Okay.
Dan, and we're going to go to a section of our podcast. So we're all done
Okay.
with the career stuff now.
Oh, good.
So now we're getting on to the fun stuff, right? This is called our packed questions segment. So it's going to be rapid fire. So our listeners can get to know you a little bit as a person, because we see you on TV and you're that big shot out there, and all this. We're going to get to know you. Dan Hanger, favorite movie?
Oh, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
See, folks? Now we're going. Now we're
Well,
getting
and
somewhere.
I still act like him, but I acted like I imitated everything from him when I was younger. Yeah, yeah. There are The Mask too, all the Jim Carreys.
Favorite place that you have ever traveled to?
Oh gosh, you know what's sad? I haven't traveled like crazy, but I love Florida. I mean, Florida's great. I'm going to be traveling more, by the way. I financially it was really rough with this job for a long time, so I'm close to getting out of my debt mess. So, but anyway,
Gulf Coast or Atlantic Coast of Florida? Which you like better?
Atlantic,
Okay.
because I really like Miami. I just love the culture. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Favorite band or artist?
Oh wow. Oh wow. Gosh, that's I'm crazy because I like like so many different things, country to whatever. I think Cardi B, her stuff is and she's so hilarious. She's nuts. And then and then we go all the way to Winona Judd. I like Winona Judd. And then right now I'm liking Justin Timberlake, his new song, Selfish. I've been obsessed with that. So I get obsessed with things, see, and I go over and over and over with something and then move on.
What is your biggest fear?
Oh my gosh, forever it was getting fired. I always thought honest to God, I had such PTSD from firing, and I was always ever doing anything right because I was always pushing the envelope, But I feel fine now because nobody wants to work, So I have more job security. But yeah, that's it. I think that I don't really. I think once my finances are out of order, I really won't care. If I've got a good savings, I'd say, okay, well, next chapter, I'll go figure it out. But yeah, I'm doing better. Maybe it's the Lexapro. I don't know, but yeah.
And Dan, what is the best piece of life advice that you have ever received?
Well, this comes from a lot of the centenarians, by the way, who I've met over the years. I did it for like 10 years. They're amazing. They always say, don't sweat the small stuff, have a sense of humor, which I do have. And I've gotten so much better at not sweating the small stuff. And I think it was Joy Behar who says this, and she goes, so what? So what? Who cares? So what? And so it's perspective. And when you're going down that road where you're ready to like lose it, you have to like mentally start to train yourself. Nope. The guys, people here will know if I start getting cranky, I say, okay, I got one more thing to say and I'm moving on. We're moving on. I have to talk myself through it. Or else you just, dwelling and all that. Don't worry about it. And I also tell the young ones here, it's like, nothing is forever. So whatever this challenges we're going through, we're gonna be fine as long as you don't overthink it. It's not gonna last forever. And if something is lasting too long, make the decision. Don't dwell, don't complain. Get out of there. Just get out and move on, because you can't control what others are doing around you. You can only control what you do and do it the best you can. And if you get fired for something and you gave your 100%, you won't care that you got fired because you did everything right. You weren't slacking. You weren't being, anything. You did what you did. to your best. So yeah, that's what I think.
Folks, don't sweat the small
Don't
stuff.
sweat the small stuffs, even though I still do sometimes. But I say, knock it off. I have conversations with yourself. It's okay.
There you go. Maybe not out in public, but maybe behind closed doors, Dan.
Yeah, okay.
Folks, today our special guest is Dan Hanger, anchor, reporter, and producer of Fox 21 KQDS News. Look him up. Dan, one last time, your social handles, how people can follow you, all of that stuff, as well as watch you at 5:30 and 9 p.m. every night.
Oh, well, our website's fox21online.com. I believe my handle is on Instagram is Dan_Hanger, Hanger, not AR. Yeah. I think it's on both Facebook, but I'm really on Facebook, Instagram, and I'm getting better with Twitter too. I'm kind of finally figuring out, like, I know it's annoying if somebody's on all three, but there are some audiences, they just want their Twitter, they just want their Instagram, or they just want Facebook. So I just post on all and I say, who cares? So what? There you go.
Folks, today we have been lucky enough to have a
please.
big shot on Dan Hanger, anchor, reporter, producer of Fox 21 KQDS News. Dan, thank you so much for being here today. We've learned a lot.
Yeah, and I'm made in America, just like your company. Isn't that neat?
Well, we appreciate you, my friend.
Hey, I think it's great.
And folks, until next time, unplug from the indoors and recharge in the outdoors.